Sometime just before the Montana winter sank its teeth into the world, Maya Torres pushed through a freezing wind with her 9-year-old daughter, Sophie, clinging to her side, both of them wrapped in coats that had long forgotten how to stay warm. The sky pressed low and heavy, hurrying people home, but Maya had nowhere warm to rush toward, not anymore. She was a 32-year-old mother drowning under bills, exhaustion, and a life that had cracked apart when her husband vanished 2 years earlier. She worked 2 jobs, slept in fragments, and tried to build a childhood out of scraps for a little girl who never once complained. That was what hurt the most. But everything shifted the evening she found a cream-colored envelope wedged in her apartment door, an inheritance letter addressed to her from a great-aunt she barely remembered. The message was simple. A remote mountain property was hers if she could pay a few $1,000s in back taxes. That night Maya lay awake, hope and fear battling beneath her ribs, wondering if this was her last chance to breathe. By dawn, she'd scraped the money together through loans, sacrifice, and desperation. And with Sophie bundled beside her, she set out toward a forgotten road deep in the mountains, toward a house she'd never seen, left behind by a woman she barely knew, unaware that the moment she stepped inside, her life would fracture into the impossible. The drive carried them through miles of forest heavy with snow, until the road shrank into a narrow, clawed-up path almost swallowed by trees. And then at the very top of the ridge, the woods opened, and the world changed shape. Before them stood a mansion built inside a living white oak, a structure so unreal it felt summoned rather than constructed. Thick roots disappeared into the earth while its massive trunk rose through the heart of the home, carrying branches that pierced through roof lines and vanished into the gray sky. Stone wings spiraled from the core, shaped with such care they looked grown rather than carved. Even covered in snow, the place breathed warmth, age, and unwavering presence. Sophie gazed through the windshield, whispering, "Is that ours?" Maya didn't trust her voice enough to answer. Inside, the air was unexpectedly warm, scented with wood and something faintly green. Alive. The walls curved around the ancient trunk, staircases wrapped its bark like ribbons, and golden light filtered from unseen windows as if the house itself generated its own glow. Every room felt crafted to cradle rather than contain, and the deeper they explored, the more Maya sensed the house watching, measuring, deciding. Then, tucked on the second floor beneath a window, she found a stack of journals written in the shaky hand of Aunt Vera, entries about seals, secrets, and something buried below the heartwood. But it wasn't until Sophie found a strange door sealed without a keyhole that the truth began to reveal itself. When Maya placed her hands against the wood, warmth flooded her palms, the hidden lock clicked, and a cold draft rose from a stairway spiraling down into the earth. The steps descended farther than the house should have allowed, carved through soil and living root, until they opened into a round chamber pulsing with faint warmth. Thick roots wove the walls like the ribs of an ancient creature, and at the chamber's center stood a stone pedestal holding a metal box wrapped in oilcloth. Maya opened it with trembling fingers, and the world she knew shattered. Inside lay a journal titled Record of the Hartwell Trust, and a meticulous inventory of what was hidden in the chamber. 342 gold bars, nearly 3,000 gold coins, silver certificates, artifacts, jewelry, and heirlooms of families who had entrusted their last remaining wealth to her great-grandfather during the Great Depression. The total estimated value, $275 million. Around her, metal containers rested in the roots like buried organs, each packed with impossible treasure. But the deeper she read, the heavier her heart became. The gold wasn't stolen, it was protection. 28 desperate families had hidden their life savings here to shield them from corrupt officials. Samuel Hartwell had built this entire house, a fortress of living wood, to guard what was not his. And Vera, his daughter, had spent 60 years alone continuing that mission. Maya sat on the cold stone floor, torn between awe and sorrow, realizing the weight she had inherited. But the house seemed to breathe around her, steady and warm, as if the tree itself understood her fear and welcomed her anyway. She climbed the stairs, leaving the treasure sealed behind her, unaware that far down the mountain, men who had hunted this secret for decades were already on their way. By the time Maya reached the top floor, headlights cut through the clearing outside. A dark SUV rolling toward the house with the eerie confidence of someone who already knew what they were looking for. 2M. Men stepped out, one older, sharp-eyed and cold. The other younger, built like someone who solved problems with force. They knocked, called Maya's name, claimed they worked with the lawyer who handled her inheritance, but every instinct in her screamed danger. She hid with Sophie in an upstairs bedroom, watching the men circle the house, testing windows, peering inside, then parking at the tree line to wait. They didn't leave until long after midnight, and even then she sensed they would return. What followed was a blur of sleepless hours, frantic research through Vera's journals, and the sickening realization that these men were descendants of corrupt officials who had hunted the gold since the 1930s. Vera had refused to give them access. Now they believed Maya was alone. And so, swallowing her fear, Maya slipped into town the next morning and contacted the FBI Art Theft Division, the only people she trusted to handle a secret this dangerous. Within hours, federal agents arrived, followed her back up the mountain, and stood stunned before the living house. When they descended into the root chamber, flashlights sweeping over gold bars and ancient coins, they exchanged glances that told Maya everything. This was real, historic, and enormous. But before the agents could secure the perimeter, the predators who'd hunted the treasure for generations made their move. And the house, a house alive, aware, and fiercely protective, answered. It happened deep in the night, when Sophie shook Maya awake, whispering that lights were moving in the forest. A dozen shadows advanced between the trees, flashlights slicing through the dark. The alarms the FBI had set up remained silent, cut deliberately. Maya grabbed Sophie and sprinted to the third-floor safe room Vera had installed decades earlier, locking themselves inside just as glass shattered below. Voices rose through the floorboards, men searching, overturning furniture, frantic as they hunted the entrance to the vault. But then the house shifted. The oak's trunk pulsed with green light faint as breath, the temperature dropping then rising in a strange wave, and from beneath the roots moved. Maya heard men shouting, then screaming, heard the crack of wood closing, branches tightening like fists. The house was defending itself, protecting its secret, its family, its history. By the time the FBI stormed in, 7 intruders had surrendered outside, pale and shaking, babbling about walls that closed in and roots that grabbed at their legs. Inside, the living mansion quietly rearranged itself, sliding overturned chairs upright, reshaping bookshelves that had fallen, resetting the damage like a living organism healing a wound. Maya placed her palms against the trunk, whispering gratitude, and felt the warmth grow beneath her hands in reply. The house wasn't simply shelter. It was guardian, partner, ancient witness, and now the tree had chosen her. The aftermath unfolded like a waking dream. The FBI secured the mountain. Historians, archivists, and specialists arrived to document the vault, Samuel's journals, and the impossible structure itself. For weeks, the house filled with murmured awe as experts traced the lives of the 28 families, locating descendants who had no idea a fortune had been waiting for them for nearly 90 years. One by one, those families arrived. Teachers, factory workers, nurses, farmers, ordinary people whose ancestors had fought to save what little they had. When they learned the truth, some cried, some laughed, all overwhelmed as the government began the legal process of returning their inheritances. As for the families who could not be traced, their unclaimed portion, nearly $40 million, was placed into the Hartwell Trust, which Maya helped establish. Its mission reflected Samuel's original promise, to protect families from predatory foreclosure and economic corruption. News of the discovery exploded across the country, helicopters circling the mountain, headlines calling Maya a hero. But she knew the truth. She had stumbled into a legacy defined by two people who had sacrificed everything. Vera had lived alone, guarding strangers' futures for 6 decades. Samuel had built a fortress of wood and faith to protect the powerless. Maya's task was simple: finish what they started. And as winter thawed into spring, she realized she couldn't keep this place hidden. The story belonged to everyone whose ancestors had been failed by powerful men. The world needed to see what courage looked like when placed in the hands of ordinary people. So the Tree Mansion became the Hartwell Heritage Center, a living archive of resilience, justice, and generational protection. With careful restoration, exhibits rose along the curved walls, filled with Samuel's blueprints, Vera's journals, the family's heirlooms, and replicas of the gold bars that had slept beneath the roots. School groups arrived by the busload. Historians walked the halls with reverence. Descendants touched the bark of the oak as if greeting the ancestor who had guarded their future. Maya oversaw it all, guiding tour, speaking to visitors, and raising Sophie in a home filled with purpose rather than fear. The trust grew, helping families avoid foreclosure scams, predatory lenders, and the same injustices that had once destroyed lives during the Depression. As years passed, Maya became recognized across the state, not as the lucky woman who found gold, but as the guardian who ensured justice outlived greed. Sophie blossomed too, inspired by Vera's journals, dreaming of becoming an architect who built homes that protected people. And whenever Maya stood before the great oak, hand pressed to its warm bark, she felt the presence of everyone who had ever trusted this place. Samuel's determination, Vera's lonely strength, the quiet echo of families who had refused to surrender. The house had carried their burdens for 90 years. Now it carried stories, hope, and rebirth. 5 years after the night the roots came alive to protect them, Maya stood once more in the observatory beside Sophie, watching the sunset spill gold through the branches. The Heritage Center had welcomed tens of thousands of visitors. The Hartwell Trust had rescued families across the region from losing their homes. And the house, the impossible, breathing house, remained a sanctuary carved from wood, history, and sacrifice. Maya placed her palm against the glass, whispering a promise to Samuel, to Vera, and to every life intertwined with theirs. The legacy will never die, not while we are here to carry it. Beside her, Sophie leaned against her shoulder, whispering, "We keep the promise, Mama." And for the first time since the day she'd arrived with nothing but debt and desperation, Maya believed her own life had grown larger than survival. It had become purpose. And so, as this story closes its last page, Maya's voice rises like a quiet echo for anyone listening. Protect what matters, stand for those who can't stand alone, and pass courage forward the way others once passed it to you. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these journeys alive, and your voice helps them travel farther than any road ever could. Before you go, where are you listening from, and what time is it where you are right now?